Well, good evening. This is our, well, I've forgotten the counting, how many webinar we do in the series of the 3P Pioneers. Tonight, our guest is Jacqueline Hollows, also known as Mama J. Wow, even fireworks in the back. Amazing. Jacqueline is a transformative catalyst, and she has a long history as an IT pro. And in 2013, she took a leap of faith, shifting gears from a thriving IT career to embark on a mission close to her heart. She founded a game-changing non-profit organization nurturing well-being and resilience in the back of beyond. The prison system, igniting hope where it seemed least expected. Over the last decade, Jacqueline has been privileged to be a catalyst to hundreds of extraordinary transformations, witnessing firsthand the profound impact of an innovative mental health paradigm, innate health, 3 principles as we know it also, on the lives of those behind bars and its ripple effect on family and the community. She also co-authored four research papers and has written a memoir of A Wing of an Angel, demonstrating to this transformative project. Now she's on a mission to share this innovative mental health paradigm with fellow social entrepreneurs and change makers driven by a passion to create a better world. Together, we'll rewrite the rules and make an everlasting difference in the world. Let's blaze a trail of hope and resilience. Jacqueline, may I give you the floor?
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you to everybody that's here and everybody that's watching the replay as well. So I won't talk for very much, because if you have questions, I'd love to hear your questions. But I'll say that we were talking before about ordinary and extraordinary, and funnily enough, I just came from another webinar where we were having a similar conversation. And I am an extraordinary person, and I'm also a very ordinary person. I have overcome so much adversity, mental health challenges, trauma, addiction, you name it. Pretty much it's been in my life in some way. And I appeared functioning for many, many years because I did well in a career and because I built, you know, like the sandcastle of security around me. But I was always struggling inside, and I had a lot of insecurity. I really thought that I wasn't good enough. I've attempted suicide many times in my life, and the only reason I'm still here is because of my gorgeous son, and because of him, you know, I needed to stay around. But I never felt like my life had any points. I just did what I thought I had to do in life. And I have also studied many other modalities, so NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, counseling. I've got a counseling qualification, emotional freedom technique, the tapping, stones, and all sorts of things. And what I found was that them things were useful some of the time and for some of the things, but they never really, including the addictions, you know, sex, chocolate, booze, drink, whatever you like. I've tried everything, but nothing ever filled the gap inside, filled that need, that want. And of course, what it was, I was looking in the wrong direction. So I was very much looking to fix myself and to fulfill myself with these qualifications. Was another one. You know, I've got lots of qualifications. Piece of paper made me feel good for a little while. And then when I stumbled upon the innate health paradigm, the three principles, Sydney Banks's work, although I had a rocky start with it because I thought it was a cult, I very soon realized that the people that I was working with, which happened to be, because I was volunteering in the community, and they happened to be alcoholics and drug addicts and ex-offenders and people that had struggled a lot, I could see the principles working within them. So I was looking at them and thinking, they're amazing. You know, they're awesome. They've got all this potential. And I could see that when they struggled, it was when they were in their heads and they had a lot of thought or a lot of insecurity. And that when they were thriving is when they were in their hearts, when at some level they were in their essence. And I could really see the difference between the two. And I like to say I'm a slow learner. And eventually, after working with people for around about 18 months, I one day realized, well, if they're amazing, I must be too. And I woke up to my own amazingness as a conduit, as an essence of life. And what happens is when you wake up in that way, you wake up to, when you wake up in that way, you wake up to what's possible. And although I actually was always a very positive person and always optimistic, I actually saw that there's a lot of logic in realizing one's own innate health. When I look for health in others, I see it, and that health speaks back. And when I look for health in myself, it speaks up. So a quick example of that would be that for myself, when I feel overwhelmed, as I often do, because I'm a person who loves to have loads of projects on the go. So, you know, I'm working in a prison, I'm writing a book, I'm starting a mentoring program, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm always thinking about the next thing to do. It's a habit, really. You know, it's one of those fill the space, fill the space. Don't sit on your own for 5 minutes. So I get overwhelmed. And when I get overwhelmed, sometimes it feels like I need 3 months off, or, you know, it's all dramatic, or, you know, I need a holiday, or I need this, or I need that, until I remember that I'm the one creating the experience of overwhelmedness, and that I'm the one creating the experience of all the things to do. And that actually, if I get quiet, whatever that I need to be able to get quiet, if I get quiet, I either don't feel overwhelmed anymore, or I come up with something that helps me to figure stuff out. So there's two directions that I like to point, not two directions, but two facts that I like to point to with the people that I work with. One is that we are all love. We are all this beautiful spiritual thriving essence of life that wants to thrive. And we are all logical creatures that can do stuff with that, and we create every day. So we create innocently our misery, and we create our happiness. And as we start to figure that out, we more often create happiness or joy or contentment. And we more often realize we don't have to stay stuck in misery or overwhelm or whatever that looks like. But we're still going to experience it because we're human beings. So we experience the whole gamut of human emotions. But when we realize we are the creators of that, it can be freeing. And I'm cautious when I say the creators, because I absolutely know that it comes with innocence. We don't deliberately create depression. We don't deliberately create suicidal ideation. We don't deliberately create violence. We don't know that we're creating those things. But when we wake up to it, that's when we can create something different. And until we wake up, sometimes, unfortunately, we stay stuck in that. So that's been my work. My work since 2015 has been working in prisons, working with addictions, working with people who are suffering, and helping them wake up to those facts that there is a spiritual essence that runs through us, and that there is a logical system that explains everything. And when we understand those two things together, that's when we're at a real sweet spot. I wrote this book. I'll tell you a little bit about this book. I wrote this book, Wing of an Angel, because I didn't think I was a writer. I didn't think I could write. Even though I have 2 degrees and several, as Surya said, 4 research papers behind me, I didn't think I could write to inspire or engage or entertain people. It's just one of those beliefs that I held all of my life, and I didn't think it was a limiting belief. I just thought it was a fact. I wasn't bothered by it. It was just a fact. And I was working in the prison system. I'm fortunate to have met most of the original pioneers and speak around the world on this subject. And people kept saying, when will you write your book? When will you write your book? And I thought, well, never. That's not me. And eventually enough people said it often enough that I thought maybe I would. And I had boxes and boxes of paper, notes from prison, diaries, flip chart paper with all the words that the men said. And I thought, well, maybe that's a book, maybe I could just put that together, and that was a book. Anyway, that was 4 years ago. And now this book has been born or birthed. And I would say that this book is a story of me overcoming adversity and where I got to. And it is the story of prison. And it's interesting because I talk about prison and the wonderful people that I've met there. But it's a story of you. It points people to the fact that you can do anything, literally anything you want to do. And you might not want to do anything. You might not want to write a book or start a non-profit organization or speak on the stage, but you can do it. And that it's like with public speaking. I never thought I could be a public speaker. I would rather die, literally. And I have I have sweated and shake and just everything, and then got on the stage and just felt like, well, the message is more important than my insecurity. Started speaking, and I always used to only speak about the people in prison because I never wanted to speak about myself. And then I would forget that I was insecure, and then I'd be rocking the stage, you know, like Madonna with a little headset on and just on there enjoying the whole thing. And it's shown me over and over and over again that as a creative being, I can create whatever life I want, and so can everybody else. And that it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be creating a beautiful life. My husband doesn't speak on stage, doesn't do any of that stuff. He loves pottering about the garden, feeding the cats, feeding me, he's the cook, looking after the house, repairing things. He's got his own little repair shop, you know. He loves doing that. He's absolutely in his element. And he's lived a very fast-paced life where he was, you know, like a big deal in his work, and been around the world. And now he's very, very happy pottering, as he calls it. So creating the life that you want will have different forms for absolutely everybody. But I want people to know that it's possible to create anything, and then let loose, you know, let wisdom guide you. Let that inner voice nudge you along what that creation might look like right now, you know, or might look like in 6 months, and follow that. And when you follow that feeling and you follow that guide, it doesn't go wrong. You have challenges and you have things that you have to learn and you have to overcome things, but it doesn't matter, because it's all, I don't think we get given what we can't handle, and everything becomes either a lesson or a joy. Do you have any questions?
Beautiful, Jacqueline. Could you tell us a little bit more about the program Beyond Recovery? Because it's not very well known here in the Netherlands, so it would be wonderful to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for the question. So when I fell across the 3 principles, I felt I met someone who had a lot of addictions and had been in prison, and I was guided to work with him. And I actually volunteered on his non-profit organization, just helping him, just sitting with him and so on. And I ended up being his support worker at university, because he'd not had any education and he had a disability, and so he needed someone to support him, and I ended up doing that with him. And through him I met all these other people from all walks of life, but with so much trauma in their lives, and they'd use addiction as a solution to the trauma. And I started researching possible addiction programs, and realized, with a very few exceptions, that the main thrust of these programs was that addiction is a disease, and that the best we can do is help people to manage their addictions, either by reducing harm or by going forever to other programs. And intuitively, I just felt like that's wrong. That can't be true. And so I kept saying somebody has to tell people, like they're whole. Somebody has to tell people that they're well. And I kept wondering who this somebody would be. Anyway, turned out somebody was me. And so I developed a program called Beyond Recovery, which was named by the people that I was working with, because as I said, I was working with a lot of people with addictions, and they were starting to, I was just talking to them about how our reality is created from our own mind, or how there's a space within us that has never been broken, regardless to whatever you've been through. I was just talking to them about that. I didn't know very much myself. I was just talking to them very simply. And they were getting jobs and sorting out their relationships and coming off drugs. And, you know, they were just basically sorting themselves out. So I was very curious about that. And eventually I was invited to speak to somebody in a substance misuse program in a prison. And I was in the main gatehouse. And the day before, I'd been working in a posh hotel. I was an assistant to a coach, and I'd been helping with this program. And then I was sitting in this dirty, noisy gatehouse. And I thought, I want to work here. I don't know why. Anyway, the substance misuse manager came, and I was petrified. I've never been in a prison before. And I walked through the prison grounds and I was absolutely petrified. And I thought, what happens if someone speaks to me? What, you know, do I speak to them? I had so many judgmental thoughts. Anyway, the guy had read a book by somebody called Richard Carlson, who had worked with Sid Banks. And he said, I think I know what this is. And he'd read a book called Stop Thinking, Start Living. And he actually had on his wall, Stop Thinking, Start Living. Amazing, right? And he said, I think I recognize this. I think this, you know. So we got on well, and he eventually agreed that he would trial the program. And he asked me how much it was going to be. And I said £50. I don't know what that translates at, but it basically, it wouldn't have covered my petrol. But I had no idea. I didn't know he was going to ask me how much it would be. So he asked me to put together a proposal for a 12-week program. And I went away and agonized over this £50 issue. And I put together a proposal. My husband, Rob, said, why don't you say it was £50 a session? And I thought, oh yeah, that's better. So we put together this little proposal. And this is why every step of this journey, I was delighted. I had no expectation of I'm going to be in every prison, or not even in one prison. I had no expectation. I was just delighted that a prison asked me to do a proposal. You know, that was amazing to me. And then he came back and he said, it's gone to the committee. So the committee, which was full of mental health advocates and psychologists and commissioners, had been discussing this work, which was amazing. And he said the mental health people like it, but the psychologists are a bit concerned. Could you write a business case? And I said, yeah, of course. And he said, include the research. And could you write it for a 12-month program? We found an underspend in the local council. Could you write it for a 12-month program? And my mind was blown. And so I came away, and then I thought, what's a business case? So I wrote to him and said, oh, what sort of titles would you have in your business case? You know, so anyway, he came back with some ideas. And it took me a while. I had to present it by the end of December 2014. And I looked for all the research, and at that time there was very little research, can I tell you? And what was out there wasn't in very good journals. It wasn't peer reviewed. It was shocking, but I learned a lot. And so I happened to be friends with someone called Jack Pranksky, who wrote the book Somebody Should Have Told Us. So I happened to be friends with him, and he said, I'm going to do a terrible American accent now. Jacqueline, you want to put yourself on the map? And I said, well, whatever that means, yeah, I'll do that. And he said, make it a research project. And because of him, I included it as a research project, and that's what the committee wanted. And so I presented this project at the end of December, which basically outlined what I would do. Now, I honestly, guys, I had no idea what I was going to do. I just read Jack's books, read Joe Bailey's books, made up a 12-week course, just literally made it up, included the evidence that I could find, and said, we're going to work for 3 hours every week for 12 weeks, and this is what we'll do. And this is what I need. These are the resources that I need. And I put the proposal forward, and I had no idea either what to charge. They didn't tell me. But I got over my insecurity about charging because, and I'm only saying this because I want you to know how made up it all is. Because I got over my insecurity because I realized if I'm going to be doing this work, this is a full-time job. And I want to bring in other people. I wanted to make sure that I, had a team. And so I put my proposal in, and at the end of January, they came back. The commissioner wrote to me himself and said, I think this is going to be amazing for our population, and said yes to the proposal. And it was a 12-month proposal for £90,000. Right? If you think that I said it's £50, and they'd got an underspend in the local council, which I knew none of this, and they got me in. And so that was my first time in prison. I decided that I wanted to get trained up, key trained as they call it, so that I could have autonomy, because I could see in the prison there are so many issues. Like if you don't run a group, nobody tells the men. They don't tell them why. They just don't unlock them. Or if somebody can't come to that group that day, they don't follow up with them and give them the follow-up work. There were so many things. So I wanted to be autonomous. So I had myself and my team trained up so that we could come in and out of the prison without having anyone to escort us. And then we did all sorts of things then. And as soon as I started the program, and I knew nothing, on the first day in prison, I stood there in prison. This story is in the book. I stood there in prison. I had all my training. And when they train you in the prison system, I don't know if anybody works in the prison system here, they scare you to death. So they tell you about all the horrible things that could happen to you, how you could be taken hostage, how the men will make a pen into a knife, and how you could be attacked, and where the panic alarms are, and how you might walk in and find somebody hanging themselves or self-harming. They scare you to death. So I'm on my first day in prison after all this training, and there'd been a riot at the weekend. So all the men were all like het up, and they're all banging their plastic cups on their cell doors. And it was very noisy. And I thought, it's just like TV. It's really scary. And I was really scared. I was really scared. And I thought, what am I doing here? And they let the men out, and they come out, and they're all half dressed, and they see a girl and they run up. Even a girl that looks like me, they come up, run up and go, oh, what are you doing here, and everything. And it's all a bit overwhelming. And this man came up to me, and he was a great big man with big bald head and a tattoo on his neck. Looked scary to me. And he said, "Can I come in, miss?" And you're trained, you're not allowed to let anyone in who's not on your list. And I've got my list on my clipboard. And I said, "Oh, what's your name?" And he told me his name. And I looked on my list, and he wasn't on my list. And I said, "Oh, you're not on the list." And he said, "I only want to see the chicks." And in the UK, chicks is a slang word for women. And so I thought he wanted to come in and like stare at the female officers on the parade outside, because they have all the officers outside so that nobody escapes. And I looked at my list, and I looked at him, and I said, "Okay, just for a minute," because I was too scared to say no. And he came in, and he moved my flip chart away from the window. And on the window ledge was a nest with eggs, dove eggs. And chicks is also a word for baby birds. And he wanted to see if the eggs had hatched, because he was getting out next week, and he'd been watching, and the room was normally locked. And what I tell people is that I don't remember this guy's name. He got out the next week, and we never saw him again. But he saved beyond recovery, because of him, I saw how much judgmental thinking I still had, even in a place where I wanted to be. And I saw he humbled me, because he helped me to see that layer of invisible thinking that we walk around in, I don't have to take notice of it. And he never did the group or anything like that, but he saved the group, because after that I looked at everybody with different eyes.
Wow. That's a breathtaking story. Is there anyone who wants to ask any questions?
I would like to ask something.
Go ahead.
I work with people who are, I don't know how to say it exactly. My English is not so good, but they have mental problems. And some of them are so full of, they believe so very much in their own not worthy thing. And when I work with those people, I do, I'm not a coach or something, but I do the practical things around their lives. But when I talk to them, I try to give them the feeling that they are beautiful on the inside and whole on the inside. But it's difficult to reach them because of their belief of themselves is so strong. How can I is it possible when you don't reach those people because they are so full of believing that they are not worth anything? Is it possible that even then they can be helped?
Yes. Do you see them as beautiful on the inside? Do you really feel that? Yeah. Okay, so amazing. The thing is, we're not in charge of how or when people will see that for themselves. And the best and simplest thing that we can do is really see it ourselves. Because in my experience, if you really see that in another person, they feel it at some level. And eventually that hears it, that you're not because we can, all the books and all the everything in the world, you just throw them all away, it comes down to you believing in them and you acting with them from that place, whether that's listening, whether that's doing that practical stuff. If you're with them from that place, you are probably their only respite in a world that is judging them. And so we can't say how much they're getting of that their behavior and everything else might be the same, but that respite, their soul is feeling that. And this work is soul to soul. And once I realized that, I did less and listened more. So your beautiful presence with them is enough. I would say let go of your expectations, let go of wanting to see them change, and just keep showing up as your beautiful self, seeing them as their beautiful selves, and let that be enough. And somewhere down the line, they or others will feel that, and you'll see changes. But when we're hoping for change, looking for change, it gets in the way of that pure spiritual soul to soul connection. Does that resonate? Does that answer your question? Good. It's beautiful. Thank you for your work. That's amazing.
Wonderful, Muriel. Thank you. Anyone else?
Want me to tell you another story? Oh, I think Petronelle was going to speak.
You have to unmute yourself a little bit. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Jacqueline.
Hello.
What you just said to Muriel about if you can see it and that other person that you see the health in, they will learn to trust you. And in that trust, that's where that concept will grow within them, that they will start to believe that, yes, health is only one thought away. My husband was bipolar, very extremely so. He had very fast circling episodes all his life, and I became his beacon of where he could kind of tap into and trust that when I was with him, that he would completely calm down. Mm-hmm. And he would be seeing his health, not always, but he would see it and start to recognize when his own thinking was off and when his own thinking was healthy. And I think maybe for Muriel, that might be a next step. If she can help her clients to see that difference within themselves. Because there are moments that everybody is healthy. It's just like when Dickon is talking about Dickon Bettinger about health is like one of those bouncy balls that you can play with in the water, and you can try to push it underwater, but eventually if that ball represents health, it will bounce back up, and you can only keep it underwater so long. It wants to pop up. And so what you just said about just being with them, believing in them, and seeing that peace is all that you can do to start.
Yeah.
What kind of work have you done with regards to mental health and people who struggle with mental health?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I acknowledge you for what you just said, because that's absolutely beautiful and spot on. And as Muriel or any of us get quiet and drop those expectations, what we will naturally start to see within others the health and able to help them identify the difference. So I love the way that you put that. And that does roll on to the answer. So I've worked with a wide range, obviously in prison, you know, we have prisons full of people with mental health conditions, bipolar, depression, schizophrenia, psychosis, you know, you name it, I've pretty much worked with it, anxiety, social anxiety, suicidal ideation, and so on. And it really does all come back down to the same thing, is being with the person as best you can without the expectations, listening to them from that deep, loving space where you sit, you know that they are in there, and being able to eventually, I could start to see, oh, there, you know, because I often with the people that I've worked with, they'll say something so profound and wise, and then like the spiral, you know, and it's gone, it gets lost in all of that. And I bring them back to that. Remember when you said that? Let me just take you. And I start to, you know, once you've built the trust, I start to encourage them or ask them, can we just move that out of the way? Can we just look at what you just said? Now, I'll also do that with professional people, because they also do that same thing. They say something really wise and then they go off into the, you know, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, no, hang on a second, let's get quiet and let's just, and as you start to pinpoint those moments and that wisdom, they start to see it in themselves as well. And what I love about what you just shared is that it'll sound different to everyone and from everyone. And so we're never looking for words or a certain phrase or something like this. We're looking from within us, from that feeling of, oh, there, I heard that then. And I started to see those sparks. And every time I saw those sparks, I'd point the person back to that. And then they become used to, oh, I do have it, because it was me that did that. You didn't say that, I said that. And they start to gain some confidence in their own health and their own mental health and their own mental well-being. I remember I worked with a guy who did a very terrible crime, and he beat someone so badly that he paralyzed the guy from the neck down. And both men very young, you know, in their 20s, something like this. And so the man who had beaten the other man, the man in prison, was so full of guilt and remorse, absolutely full of guilt and remorse, couldn't sleep because he kept thinking about that he'd taken this man's life, basically, is what he felt like. But he was on remand, which means that he hadn't been sentenced yet. So he's also hoping to not go to prison for a long time, because he didn't want to lose his life either. So he was full of all of this conflicting stuff. And when we talked about this, he said, you know what, I do have that voice that tells me not to do something or whatever. I do have that voice, but I can't catch it. And that's it, right? Because he knows he has the voice. So already you've got a good start. And we talked about that a little bit. And that's why he told us that story, because in the time when he was beating this other man, his victim, he comes from a gangster environment, and everyone around him was encouraging him. And he said, I knew to walk away. I couldn't face down like everybody else saying I had to do this and so on. So we talked around that. I can't remember specifically what I said to him, but we talked around it, and I point to the fact that he could hear the voice, that awareness is what's important, not the rest of it, what I can't do, but the awareness that you have it. Keep looking there, keep being grateful for that. And he actually came to us a few days later and said, you know, thank you. And we wanted to know why. And he said, I have never been nice to my mom. She speaks to me every day. Every day she, you know, I phone her up and I give her a hard time, and I always want something, and I always blame her for everything. And he said, and I spoke to her and she was all nervy. And I said, Mom, thank you so much. You speak to me every day, even though I abuse you. Like, what is it with that? And she broke down in tears, and, you know, she was so grateful. She said, well, I love you. And he said, well, I love you. And he said, you're making me soft, miss. What, like, telling my mom I love her in front of all the guys on the wing. And he ended up being someone, he would calm down all the other people when they were in fights. He stopped people from hurting themselves. He would liaise with the officers, you know, when people were getting feisty with them. Because that awareness pointed to his spiritual essence. And once there's a bit of light coming out of there, you just can't stop it. Now, it doesn't have a linear approach. It doesn't go like your husband, oh, I've got this awareness and now I can apply it to this thing and now I can be different here. It doesn't have a linear approach. It has an immersive approach. So things show up in other areas of your life that you didn't expect. And that's why we have to drop our expectations of what the outcome might look like, because him speaking to his mom and realizing he loves his mom, I mean, wow, that's going to change a lot of things. Any more? Any more
questions from anyone?
Are you enjoying it?
Wonderful. It's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit about your business work?
Yeah.
You already referred to that because, well, as far as I can see it, and I haven't had any experience with people in jails or in prison, but I think people are very much the same.
Yeah.
And I talk to managers and CEOs sometimes, but most of the time I talk to people who are in construction or doing harsh work.
Mm.
And they get frustrated by the system. They get frustrated by what's hindering them. And I try to calm them down, to see the logic in that, because they're really shooting themselves in the foot all the time. And I think it works for us all in the same way. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I recently worked with a organization. I'm working with their leadership team, and they were really hard. And they were naughty. They were really naughty and aggressive and rude, and, you know, just like a really tough crowd. And afterwards, I actually got an apology, and I was like, oh, it's okay. You know, I've worked with prisoners. It didn't bother me at all. But to your point, it's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. We all get in our own way. We are conditioned to try to deal with what's outside.
Yeah.
We've you know, been born into and educated into a society that tries to move the deck chairs on the Titanic to fix things. And we're just simply not taught about how the mind works, how we're experiencing life. and the power that we have to be able to change that. So I absolutely agree. People are people, or as one of my guys put it, people are people in it. And it doesn't matter where they are. And that's why the prison work was so moving. I had many visitors and I trained many people while I was doing that work. And you would be in a room in a prison, which is the most unpleasant place really to be. And you would be sitting with a group of philosophers, and it didn't matter their educational background or any of that, because the wisdom and the love and the beauty that was coming out. And I believe professionals can be the same. But yeah, absolutely. And I used to think, oh, I can only work with people in prison, or I can only work with people with mental health or addictions. And what I've come to realize since I've repositioned myself in the last couple of years is that people are the same. And when you look for love and you look for truth and you look for health, you see that in whatever population you're working with. We're all walking around wearing our masks and trying to be something. And if we only knew we don't have to do that. You know?
It's our own programming, isn't it? We created our own programming all the time, and we're trying to build up this facade to show that we are this remarkable person who's doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
And yes, we are remarkable. Each and every one of us is.
Yes.
But the silly thing is that we are trying to show the world that we are remarkable.
Yeah.
And we don't have to.
That's right.
Beautiful. Time flies as if you're talking about this. So you see that? It's amazing. Let's see if we can have a last question for tonight. Is there anyone who would like to pose a question? Yeah. May I ask a last question then? If you look at the future, and I know it's not wise to look at the future, but we try to do some stuff there. How do you see yourself in the future? How do you see this develop?
Such a good question. So I have come to a place where I accept, and I didn't for a long time, but I accept that the work that I have done has been influential, pioneering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for a long time, I denied that. My ego couldn't bear to hear that, because I would be like, oh, I'm a pioneer. But I've come to accept it, because I've realized that my voice has a presence, and that I can make change, and that I can use that for good. I can use that work, that pioneering spirit for good. And that's one of the reasons why I finished the book, because I wanted to honor the work that I've done and the people that I've worked with, but also because I want to use this as a platform to be able to talk on a bigger stage, to be able to talk to, this is a beautiful crowd, right? But you're pretty much, you're on the same page. I want to talk to people who are not on the same page. I want to have policy discussions and change the way I don't have to do the work in prison, but let's have compassionate people working in prison as a starting point, right? Not that they're not compassionate, but the system's not very compassionate. So for the future, for now, I feel that I will talk about this work, keep talking to people who don't know about it. I'm going to write another book next year, which is a guide for people to be able to reach their potential. And keep listening to life, keep listening to my wisdom. I mean, literally this week I've come up with 2 ideas and just gone, oh yeah, I could do that. And I have to, my wisdom says, stop doing so many things and concentrate on what you're here for. And I feel like I'm maybe here to talk about this and inspire others. Because after every talk, I always have someone say, oh, I've gone and volunteered at the homeless shelter, or I've gone and started working with refugees, or, you know, I've gone and found these people that I can go and work with. And I feel that I can now. Because isn't it interesting? We can have all this confidence in ourselves and do things, but when we want to go and make change in the world, it can feel like, well, I'm not good enough to do that. And that's what I felt for many years. I can't make any changes. Who am I? But I now know, take whatever skills you've got and go make those changes, where even if that is just being nice to the people around you, to the delivery men and to the baristas and you know, the people that we see every day, even if it's just being nice and present with them. And so I want to use my voice now as a catalyst for change and a catalyst for encouraging others to go out there and be the change in the world that we want to see.
What a beautiful closure. Thank you very much, Jacqueline. Thank you very much. Oh, wow. You got a few tricks up your sleeve.
I've learned a few tricks. Apparently I was working with some Palestinian people and they said they think my Zoom is blessed.
Isn't that beautiful? Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here tonight with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for telling us all these stories. I think they are very worthwhile, very enriching. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Connect with me if you would like to.
Okay.